Hey young friends, Dr. Bill here. Certainly hope that you're doing well today. I'm back with another one of our lessons from our Big Names in the Bible series. And today we're doing our third lesson on the prophet Isaiah. The story I'm going to tell you comes from Isaiah chapters 38 and 39. And it goes something like this. King Hezekiah, the king of Judah, who lived in Jerusalem, became very, very ill. In fact, he became so sick that he was very close to dying. Well, the Lord said to Isaiah, I want you to go to Hezekiah and tell him that he really is going to die, that his days are numbered, and tell him that it's time for him to get his affairs in order. Well, that must have been a hard job. Nevertheless, Isaiah went to Hezekiah and said, Your sickness is unto death. You will not survive this. Naturally, Hezekiah, when he heard this, he was devastated. He was absolutely shaken and broken. And so he did what most of us do whenever we're confronted with that kind of bad news. He turned to God. And he began to pray, and he prayed very earnestly, very sincerely, prayed with all of his strength. Well, as Isaiah tells us, the Lord heard Hezekiah's prayer, and the Lord said to Isaiah, I want you to go back to see King Hezekiah, and I want you to tell him that I have heard his prayer. And because of his sincerity, because of the genuineness of his spirit, I am going to give him 15 more years of life. So Isaiah went to Hezekiah and said, The Lord has heard you, and you're going to live for 15 years. You are healed of your disease. Now, can you imagine how wonderful that must have felt for Hezekiah to get that news that he wasn't going to die, that he was going to have many more years of life? What a wonderful, wonderful experience. Well, that's one story. The second story regarding King Hezekiah goes like this. It seems that some folks from Babylon heard that Hezekiah was sick. And so the king of Babylon sent some messengers, and they brought a letter from the king saying, Please receive us, and we're here because we want to give our best wishes to King Hezekiah. We heard that he was ill, and we're very grateful that he has been healed. Well, naturally, King Hezekiah was very, very impressed by this, and so he decided to show hospitality to these visitors from Babylon. Hezekiah showed them his palace, showed them the temple, showed him all of the treasures that the nation had, and also showed him all the things that the nation had in their storehouses. He just showed them everything. Well, Isaiah got wind of this, and he went to King Hezekiah and he said, I hear that you've had some visitors from Babylon. And the king said, Yes, I have. And Isaiah said, Well, what did you show them? And Hezekiah said, Well, I showed them everything. They were so gracious. They were so nice to me. They were glad that I was healed. And it seemed like just a very nice thing for me to do to return the favor and extend some hospitality. Well, Isaiah responded very harshly and said, You have made a tremendous mistake. These people from Babylon were not here to wish you well. They were here to spy out the land. They were here to see how strong our defenses were and to see how rich our nation was. And as a result of that, Isaiah said to Hezekiah, I want you to understand that the Lord has said, this time when a nation comes against you, this time when Babylon comes against you, the nation will not be able to stand. Jerusalem will fall. The temple will be destroyed, and all of the people will be carried off to Babylon, and they will live there in exile. Well, as you might imagine, once again, Hezekiah was brokenhearted by this news. It was a shattering experience. And so we can see that in the space of 2 very short chapters, Hezekiah goes from this wonderful experience of being healed and delivered, and then to the other extreme of having very bad news brought to him. Well, the point of these stories is that they illustrate for us the work of prophets. Prophets in the Old Testament were called upon by God to do many things. Sometimes they had a good job to do. They were sent by God to offer encouragement, to speak a word of hope and assurance. And that was something that the prophets probably enjoyed because they got to bring good news to people. On the other hand, however, prophets sometimes had to speak very hard and difficult truths to people, particularly kings and people in power. And that was the second occasion, or the second instance for Isaiah. He had to come to Hezekiah and say, this is not going to end well. Babylon is going to take over our country and carry our people off. I don't imagine that Isaiah enjoyed delivering that bad news. Nevertheless, that was his task. That was what God called him to do. Well, you and I are not prophets like that. But I think we can learn from Isaiah that this is sometimes what we have to do to be people of faith, and this is how we sometimes have to respond to our friends. Sometimes God gives us the opportunity to be near our friends and to give them hopeful words of encouragement, to assure them that things will be okay, to stand with them and to try to boost their spirits. And that's a job, I think, all of us, when we're doing the job of a friend, we enjoy that. But sometimes being faithful requires that we speak a hard truth to our friends, maybe something they don't want to hear. Well, as difficult as that is, sometimes that's what our friends need most. They need someone to tell them the truth. Isaiah did that with Hezekiah. And it was a moment for Hezekiah once again to reaffirm his faith and to put his trust in God, even though he knew that down the road things would not work out well for the nation. So from Isaiah, we can learn some very important lessons about what it means to be a good friend. And he teaches us this very, very well. Well, that's it for today. Again, I'm so glad that you could join me. I'll be back with you next week with another lesson. In the meantime, as always, if you have any questions, you can give me a call. You can send me a text or an email. I'll be happy to speak with you anytime, anywhere. I certainly hope the rest of this week goes well for you, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, and God bless. Bye-bye.